the other side. Repeat that on the other side. You can remove this inner liner and move it out of the way. T25. Okay, so the reason we're accessing here is because there are, if you look inside there, see that bolt there? And there's one above it as well. Let's try to give you access to that. You see those two? You remove those two bolts to access the bumper. So we're going to be removing those. This one, this whole bracket we're going to loosen up. Anything here that looks connected to the bumper, we'll be removing. So once we remove this bumper, we should be good. So that's the next step. So remove it. Okay, and now we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. You're going to remove 1, 2, 3, and that will remove the plastic bumper cover from this. Also, if you look in there, there is another bolt as well. It is a Torx, and there's one on each side. As you can see, I've put some jack stands securing my bumper. As I pulled it off, you only have to loosen these through that hole. It's just a washer that holds on there. It's like a guiding pin. There's the other one on the other side. You can see it's actually like a full plastic. It's actually missing on the other side. So to remove the bumper, you have to disconnect this harness here, connector here, and disconnect another connector right here. And you are good to remove. You remove the air ducts. They just clip into here, here, and here. And there they are. Same thing with this side. Pull out of the bottom. You just pull them out. There they are. They fit in here. They just clip on here. They don't actually have a place to screw on. Okay, now we can have a better look at everything and our connectors that we need to release for the horn. I may just disconnect this nut and remove it. Let our horn dangle and do the same thing to the other side. Our horn just dangles, no big deal. You're now going to remove 1, 2, 3 bolts that are 13 millimeter on both sides to remove this rear bar here, okay? I loosen them off by hand first. Let's do the other side. This is our rebar. So now we were left with this frame to come out. So we're going to disconnect these connectors. This is for the condenser. The condenser is going to lay down once we remove the rest of the stuff out of the way. So that's what we're going to do now. So right now we're going to disconnect this, loosen this up, and anything else that's in the way, we'll have to remove the clamp for the lower rad hose, let the rest of the coolant drain. We'll have to remove the headlights out of the way, which should be only 2 bolts. Let's check it out. To remove the headlight, you need to do an extension with the T27 that goes through here, slides along the headlight and disconnects this bolt here. You remove this T30 and loosen this T30 here, and your headlight comes off once you disconnect your connector. So we're going to do the same thing on this side, get this headlight out. All right, so now we got both our headlights out. We can peel this back. You just want to peel this back here so nobody's way. You're going to loosen these two. These two. We're going to disconnect this harness here. We're going to do everything from up top first. Disconnect this harness here. That'll disconnect this electronically from the car. Then we'll have to disconnect the cooling hose down there, the 2 intercooler pipes, 1 on each side, and we can just remove them out. So we can disconnect it from here, disconnect it from the bottom, or we can just disconnect it from the bottom on both sides and slide it out. So then we'll be disconnected from the intercooler from the front and the radiator, and then all we got to do is see the snub mount down there. We got to support the motor so that the snub mount doesn't get hung up on this bracket, and then we're ready to come out. Also, we got it's the power steering cooler line, so we're going to disconnect this. I've seen people disconnect the actual lines right there, so I may do that. I may clamp these two lines so that they don't leak. Just squeeze the two hoses and then just refill whatever pours out of here. That may be the easiest way to do it. You know what I'm saying? I got to disconnect this hose here on this side and that hose on the other side. They'll allow us to lay down the actual condenser. It'll lay down here because the hoses have enough length. So we're going to remove these flaps here now. These flaps here now. Remove these, disconnect this connector, and remove this here. All right, so we've disconnected the harness from the front. Everything here is disconnected. The flap is off. T15s. Okay, and we remove these covers, which are right there. There's one for each side. We just disconnected the crash sensors. Just unscrew the whole sensor connected to the harness and peel it back. Do the same thing to this side. The only thing left to disconnect from the top is 1, 2, 3. Loosen the hose here. These two. And this one here. And the rest of it is underneath the vehicle, which we'll get to right now. All right, so we have the car up in the air. We've removed both intercool pipes, driver's side and the passenger side are both removed. 7mm nut on the actual clamps, and you just pull them out. Now I'm draining the coolant, and right above where the stream of coolant is, there's a little plug. Undo the plug, just drain your coolant out. While the coolant's draining, take a look at what else needs to be connected, disconnected, should I say. So what else do we got? There. Okay, so here's the snub mount. So option one is we can just, we're replacing it anyway. So what we're gonna do is take this, and these 3 bolts out. This will remove the snub mount, and then we won't have to worry about supporting the motor to remove this clamp. So we're gonna do that right now. Once you're done with everything up top, disconnecting the coolant hose by pulling up on the clip. Everything's disconnected from the bottom. We got our condenser disconnected, just 4 screws. And then we just lay it down. As you can see, there's more than enough slack in this hose. We're not damaging anything. So the next step is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it comes out. Also, the snub mount is removed with an Allen, and you can just pull it off the motor. When you're underneath, you see it goes right there, and you just pull it out this way, and now that's fine. So now we're going to remove this, and everything should come out. Now we can remove these. As you can see, it's already giving us more space. So right now, we are going to need help to hold it up. So what I'm going to do is I am going to push it forward and leave it on these bolts right here. By doing that, when I disconnect the other ones, it won't just fall and hit someone. What we don't want to do is we don't want to drop it on the condenser. Let's just see how much it weighs. Okay, it's not that heavy. So what we can do is just hold it up. Loosen one. Switch arms. Make sure you get a good grasp on it. The hood latch release cable is still attached. Needs to be disconnected. It just pulls out. Okay. Right, there we go. Entire assembly's out now. You just lay it down out of the way, And now we have access to everything. So we obviously have all the room in the world. We're gonna soak these bolts. See if that crank pulley is gonna come out. Okay, so what we want to do first is actually remove the upper cover. I know a lot of people remove this hose, G30. And the good way to get more space out of this is loosen this one here. And then there's one more right here on the intake manifold. You'll see, this gives you all the room you need. There you go, there's one cover. What we can do is make sure all those are on. Grab this. Pray we don't break any. One. Make sure it's all the way in. Two. Actually, it's so loose. This is only like not that tight. 3, 4. This timing belt was done, but it was a long time ago, so that's why I'm doing it. 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's our crank pulley bolts. We will be reusing them. The manual says not to. Just give it a little love. Knock some of the rust off. This pulley looks great. It's in good shape. And we can remove the lower cover now. So that is all the bolts. There's our cover. If I leak, oh, that's not oil that was leaking here. That was coolant leaking from our water pump. So it looks like we did a good idea here. You take a look. Our water pump is starting to leak here. Because it's definitely not oil. It's definitely coolant leaking. But it's mixing with oil or something's going on here. Or maybe I dripped some oil. It's just coolant gellifying here, looks like. And it's actually getting on the belt. Which is no bueno. Not good. Okay, so the belt itself is actually in good shape. So what we're going to do here is, first thing we want to do is time the motor. So if everyone can take a look, it is leaking from right there in the water pump. And it's coming down here, picking up the dirt and making it look like an oil leak here. But really, it's just, it smells like coolant and oil mixed together, but there is no, unless it's leaking from behind here, we'll have to take a look, but I don't see a leak from the oil seal. We'll have a look once we remove everything. So now we're going to time the motor, find our timing marks. Well, our mark is perfect right there. Okay, so right now the motor is timed perfectly. And what I want to do is leave this overnight draining, right? So I marked everything. So here's my mark. Marks up, that was the old mark that they had on there. And if you put your cover back on, in its position, that's pretty much where the time mark goes. So that's the mark I'm going by. I'm marking here and here, this little point, just in case it moves overnight. My cam is perfectly timed. So what I'm going to do is just leave this motor overnight while the coolant just drains from the water pump. So right now we got to loosen the pulley. So we got to get an Allen, 8 Allen, goes here. And you just want to loosen up the nut, which is a 13. So what we're going to do is hold the engine, loosen this bolt, and peel this back. Okay. So now that that's peeled back, we can remove our tensioner. The engine hasn't moved. Before we do that, So our engine is perfectly timed. We can remove our rollers as well. They are at 12 millimeter. Remember which roller goes where. As you can see, this is the black one. Just take a look at its shape in comparison to the other one. This one is a 13 millimeter. The dimple, see the dimple on it? That one goes on the driver's side. So don't get this mixed up. Listen to the bearings. None. You can hear it, the bearing's bad in it. So it's a good thing we're changing them. So now we can pull the belt off. So just go slowly because you don't want to move anything. Just walk it off. Okay. Okay. Here's our timing belt. It is not in bad shape, but okay, so the next step is let's take our tensioner off. Put this nut here so we don't forget. Alright, and now we're gonna remove these here to let the coolant drain out. It is a 10 mil, so I highly recommend taking these off by hand. The torque on this isn't very much. So what you do is this. 1, 2, 3. It's only 3 that holds this really. So this is what you do. You loosen all of them. Okay, 1. Okay. And now the top one, let's bring it out more. Okay. There it goes. See how we haven't removed the water pump fully yet? Because we don't want it to be a mess. There might not be much coolant left in here since there it goes. There we go. So as you can see, our water pump was definitely starting to leak. It was corroded. Maybe when they originally did the timing belt, they didn't touch the water pump. I'm not 100% sure. But the way that seal looks, it's definitely not looking good. Okay, here's our new water pump, not with a metal impeller as I like, but that's the kit that came. A little lubrication on that seal. There, the seal is lubricated. Our mating surface is dry. Okay. Now we can put this back in, and it goes like so. There we go. Get our bolts for that. Water pump is 132 inch-pounds or 15 Newton meters. 1, 2, 3. That's good. Next step is make sure our timing marks are still good. The way we do that is we place this on here like so. Okay. We put this on here. As you can see, our timing mark is right there. You see that little notch there? It's lined up with our arrow. And then here is lined up perfectly with our arrow. So we're good. We can remove this. We know our timing marks are perfect. We can double check them at the end regardless. This one here that doesn't have any point, it is the same on both sides. You can't mess it up because the distance is the same. Doesn't really matter how it goes on. So this one goes, and this one is a 12 millimeter. The torque on that is 35 Newton meters, 25 foot-pounds. There we go. So that's good. Our next idler does have a dedicated position. As you can see, it's got a little ridge on that, and that little ridge goes like so. The torque on that is 18 foot-pounds. So that's torqued. Now both our idlers are torqued. Everything's dried off, blown off. You don't want any fluids down in here. Our mark is still good. Just do this right here. There we go. There's our mark. We know our timing belt's lined up. Water pump's good. So here's our water pump, our tensioner. And it actually has a position it goes in. It sits in here like so, and it rides inside here, this little groove, and as you twist it, it adjusts. So as you adjust it, you put tension on the belt. Okay, so what we want to do is be here, and when we adjust our tension, you see our arrow, grab our timing belt, slide it up through here. Get it on. Once you get it on nice and tight, this is the side that matters. The tension is all on this side. So this is the side that matters how you get it on. The other side is where you're going to take up the tension. So as you can see, all our tension's on this side. This is pretty good right here. Okay? You can't get another tooth out of this, that's why. And we can still move this a little further back. If you see up here, you'll see that we can still move this belt further back to take up that slack. Perfect. So now our tension, there's almost no tension on this side. Our line is still lined up. Now we have to tighten the torque this. So the way you do it is so once you get the tensioner on, the belt's on, you're gonna rotate this until it lines up. That notch lines up in this notch, and that's how you have the perfect tension. See there, right there? So once you have the perfect tension, tighten this baby up. Okay, so now your belt's tightened. Now we're going to torque that. 25 newton meters, 18 foot-pounds, which we have set up already. Now we're just going to do this. Our tensioner is now torqued. So our timing belt is complete. So all we need to do now is double check everything. Okay, so now we're ready to go around twice, double check our markings. So that's what we're gonna do now. I'm gonna go around twice. There's our mark. As you can see, our mark's still going around. So now we're gonna go around one more time. We want to go around a few times. So go slowly when you get near the mark. And our mark is still there. Our belt tension is good. All our bolts are tightened. So I would say that our job is complete here. We can put our covers back on, and we can call this a success. Alright guys, so we are going to do some more work on this vehicle. We're going to change the engine mounts on both sides. While we're here, we have extra access. But before we do that, we're going to finalize this with all our stuff on so that everything's out of the way. And then we can continue on. Alright guys, so we're ready to I put the cover back on, and we torque all these to 88 inch-pounds or 10 newton meters. Okay, Now that that's torqued, as you can see, there's a hole right there. It corresponds to a hole on the crank, and it only goes on one way. Grab your bolts, put them back on, get a little Loctite, and you're going to put a little bit on each bolt because we are reusing them. The manual says to not reuse them and put new ones, but I think it's a little bit overkill. Get them all hand tight. If you're reusing, 49 Newton meters or 33 foot-pounds. So that's what we're gonna do. This is from someone online when we're using the bolts. So I'm gonna go by that because normally it is 10 Newton meters and then 45 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, all of them are tight. Let's give the motor a spin and see if everything still lines up. Okay. Take a look at our mark. I'll highlight it. Difficult to see. Here's our blue cover. There's our arrow. Here is our mark. I think we're bang on. What do you guys think? Here is our line. Here is our arrow, and it lines up perfectly on the back of that motor. Mark the belt. So I think we're 100% good here. We just gave the motor a couple of times, turned it around earlier, and now we did it again. And the motor both times was lined up and timed. What we're going to do now is just tidy up our other cover with some brake clean like we did that one. And then reinstall it. Alright. So here we are. This cover slides behind here. Gentle, it'll go in. And as you can see, it slides in behind. You gotta make sure you're behind the timing belt. And underneath the cam sensor. Okay, so you want to get that first, like so. And as you can see, it actually will slide. It shouldn't be on top. Should it? It should be behind, I think. Now it's installed correctly. It looks like in the past someone didn't do that and damaged the actual cover. Not a big deal. Just to prevent dust and stuff from going in. Same thing, we're going to torque these to 88 inch-pounds. Everything's torqued. Okay, so time belt is now complete. Looks great. Everything's timed. Okay, so now we can re-establish these two bolts here as well. So that is the coolant hose that goes to the turbo. So it has two brackets. We're just gonna tighten this up. Done. Brackets back on. We can start reassembly, but what I'm going to do is actually replace the engine mounts in a separate video, but I'm going to make this a whole series maybe of everything. We'll see. So that's it for now.